What if I asked you to choose what you could have less of in your life and what you could have more of in your life? What would you say to me? What do I mean by this question? Let's say we were meeting over coffee and I would ask you, what would you like to have less of right now in your life? You probably tell me less stress, less anxiety, less concerns, less work, less deadline, less emails, less notification. If I asked you, and what would you like more of? What would you say to me? I'm going to take a guess here. I think you would tell me more time. I think you would tell me more joy. If I said, and what else? What else do you want more of in your life right now? If you could get anything at all, you'd probably tell me that you want to be more present, that you want to just slow down, have time to breathe, have time to reflect. You know what I hear most often is people want more perspective. Can you relate to that? I don't know about you, but when I burnt out, I lost perspective. And that's something that I come across so often in my burnout consultation, the loss of perspective, whereby it feels like you lose a sense of priority. You don't really know anymore what's most important. You're always chasing, rushing, working, and you don't know what else is important because you have no energy left to think about anything else. Most of my clients say to me that they're constantly fighting. And I wonder if you feel like that too. I remember that I used to feel like I was some kind of firefighter, always the one running into the fire to put out the fire and into the eye of the storm. And you know what? I loved it. I got a massive kick out of that. I loved the adrenaline. I loved the chase. I loved the battle in a sense because I knew that I could serve and I knew that I could be of service and I knew that I was going to help my clients, my firm, my team, my colleagues. And there was something about it that was kind of addictive, if I'm being honest. And today I want to talk about the psychology of burnout and something that you may not have thought about, which is the psychology of addiction and how work addiction can actually play a role in the burnout equation. As a clinical hypnotherapist, I specialize in addiction, all kinds of addiction. I help with different substances and addiction to help alleviate the craving and understand the root cause for the addiction in the first place. But what if I told you right now that I am a former addict? Would you be surprised? Would you start thinking, oh, what did you used to take? Addict of what? Were you an alcoholic? Were you a drug user? Were you addicted to a particular substance? I'm guessing that's what you would think. But what if I told you that I am a former addict, but not to the substance that you can think of? I am a former work addict. I am a former recovered workaholic. Work addiction is real. And in many ways, I think it can be a very dangerous substance because, unlike alcohol or drugs, where there is some kind of a societal message whereby we know instinctively or as a society that it's not good for us, when it comes to work, we actually get mixed signal. In other words, we actually get a lot of encouragement from being hard workers and we get a lot of social validation for being hard workers. I remember saying that I'm always busy. And I loved that. I loved saying I'm busy. Oh no, I'm too busy for, and I'm busy for. I used to start most of my sentences every day with I'm busy. How are you? Busy. Really? That's how you are? How often have you said that this week? Somebody came to see you and said, hey, how are you? And you replied, busy. That's not an answer. When somebody's asking you how you are, they don't expect you to say busy, yet we accept that, don't we? And in fact, we think it's a good thing. Every time I said, I'm busy. I got a little kick out of it because it made me feel like I must be important. I must be doing something really productive. So I like that. We wear the badge of busyness like a badge of honor. And of course, being busy, busy, busy is not a bad thing. There is noble quality in being hardworking. And I would still consider myself a very hard worker, but I am no longer a work addict. What is the difference? Well, the difference is the sense of control. It's also the sense of without harm. What do I mean by that? Let me explain. The difference between me now and me before is that now I still work really hard, but not to the point where it harms me or harms my family or the people that I love. Back when I burnt out, back when I was a work addict, I worked to the point that it harmed me and my family. I remember having terrible mood. I would come back home sometimes and snap or be sad or be pissed off and really not have the bandwidth to be surrounded by the people I loved. How often do we actually have the worst mood and we actually take it out on the people we love? Don't you see that as a side effect? Is work really meant to put you in a position where you start to harm the people you love because of your bad mood? Have you thought about the consequences of you coming home on a Friday night and being in a full mood and everybody else, your wife, your husband, your kids, actually paying the price for that? And what else does that addiction lead you to do? In my case, my work addiction led me to neglect my sleep, to neglect my physical health. I thought that my zone of genius, where I got paid, where I got praised, was my desk, my office, my work. So that's the only thing that I truly valued because I liked the status that being a lawyer gave me. And I loved serving my clients at the highest level. So that was the thing that I protected most above all. My identity was tied into what I do, not who I am. I was tied into being of service as a lawyer. And that was the only thing that mattered to me. And that's not a bad thing. It's a noble profession and it's wonderful. And if you are listening to me right now and your identity is tied into what you do, that's not a bad thing per se, but is it harming you? Is that identity actually bleeding into other aspects of your life in a negative way? And the way to identify that is to see if through this attachment, this addiction, this identity, you actually engage in harmful behaviors. So, for instance, do you hide working from your loved ones because you're embarrassed by how much you work? Do you feel that showing up for your loved ones is sometimes a bit of an effort or cumbersome because you're too exhausted or tired? Do you have dangerous coping mechanism, be it smoking, be it drinking, be it pills, being painkillers, being whatever it is that you take or do to cope or as an outlet to continue to do what you do? One thing I would like to ask you is, have you ever noticed that the things that you use or you take to take the edge off at the end of a long work day are also taking some of your brilliance off? I wonder if you thought about that. Let me ask you that question again. Are some of the things that you take to take the edge off also taking some of your brilliance off? Because you are more than what you do. What you do is essential, and I want you to continue to thrive in your career. And what you do is noble, and it's a wonderful thing to be dedicated to your career, but at what cost? Is this jeopardizing your health at the moment, at the pace at which you do it? Could you be ambitious and healthy at the same time? I used to think that I had to choose. In fact, I didn't even realize that my health was being compromised until I got really sick. Have you ever thought about the fact that you can be ambitious and healthy? That being ambitious and having a big, glorious career does not justify you being unhealthy, you being in pain, you not working out, you're not moving, you're not being in nature, you're not knowing how to relax. And how do you gauge whether you are just an ambitious professional or whether you may be a work addict? Is how you treat your relationship vis-a-vis work and your other relationships. For instance, what is your relationship to your emails? Do you tend to need compulsively to check your emails first thing in the morning or feel anxious otherwise? Do you need to compulsively check your emails right before falling asleep or you feel anxious? I used to feel more anxious if I didn't have access to my phone or my emails than if I did have access to it. And do you feel almost a sense of void when you're not working? Do you find it really hard to relax? And in fact, if you're taking time off, you feel guilty. I used to feel this sense of guilt or dread even on vacation or time off because my mind was at work. When you're not working, do you still obsess about work in a negative way? I'm not thinking about it in a positive way. Like right now, in my life at the moment, where I'm no longer burnt out and I have so much joy for what I do, of course, I think about work sometimes on my days off, but in a really positive way. I think about how I can be more creative. I think about new projects. I think about how I can serve my client at a higher level, but in a way that is positive, that is creative, in a way that is filling me with joy and motivation and excitement. Before, when I used to think about work, it was a sense of dread, of not being enough. It was never enough. Do you have compulsive behavior vis-a-vis your work, vis-a-vis your emails? And do you find it almost impossible to know when to draw the line? In other words, what is your relationship with your boundaries? Do you have any boundaries? Do you honor your sleep? Do you prioritize your physical health? Do you treat having to wake up to go to a gym class or a yoga class or a meditation class with the same importance and the same level of priority as you would a client meeting? It may surprise you, but the way I handle it now is I actually put things in my diary. And yes, I do treat my yoga class or my run or my date night in the same way because I put it in the diary in the same way that I put my client meetings. And the reason why I do that is because I am a former recovered workaholic. And I know that if I don't put those boundaries in place, if I don't schedule things outside of work, I do have a bit of a tendency to overconsume my drug of choice, which is work. Here's my question for you today. Is your drug of choice overworking? And what are you trying to run away from? Very often, when we overwork, when we overuse the substance, it's because we run away from something. So are you overworking right now because your marriage is falling apart? Or is your marriage falling apart because you're overworking? Which one is it? Are you running away from a very conflictual relationship in your life? And are you soothing with work? Is work an actual escape mechanism for you? Is work an outlet? Is work a way to make you feel good about yourself because other aspects of your life are failing? Perhaps your marriage is failing, or perhaps your health is falling apart. Perhaps you got a really scary diagnosis from the doctor, and the only thing that you can do now is continue to work because that's the thing that makes you feel good about yourself. And again, that's not a bad thing per se, but I really want you to gauge where you're at vis-a-vis your relationship with work. Is it a healthy relationship? One that brings you joy and fulfillment? Or has it become a toxic relationship where you entertain compulsive behaviors that actually are harming aspects of your life, be it your mental health, your physical health, your emotional health, your spiritual health, your family's health? Which aspect of your life are you currently compromising by working the way you do? And can you see a future where you can continue to excel within your work at your organization, but without that feeling of having to constantly sacrifice and neglect other aspects of your life? I do still work really hard, but not to a point where I have to neglect other aspects of my life. I have learned that I can work hard and look after myself. I have also learned that when I look after myself, I can work harder and in a more sustainable way because it's a pace that actually I can maintain and I can show up as being the best version of myself. Can you say the same? If not, if today you resonate with the message of being potentially a work addict and you are struggling with some signs and symptoms of addiction, I want you to know that you can end this and understand where you're at vis-a-vis your burnout journey. So I would love to invite you to take your burnout quiz if you haven't done so, and make sure that you also join my burnout prevention blueprint program to help you recover from burnout today and for good. Thank you.